Hello, everyone. This is the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast. If this is your first time here, this is a podcast about political commentary, protest music, and revolutionary thinking. My name is 4AS, and this is my co-host, Myster E. So, Myster E, how are you going today?
Very well, 4IS. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, and we've got another interesting topic here today.
We do. It's something that you covered in a recent video that I thought was quite interesting. Titled, very simple title for all of you out there if you want to search it. It's on the 4IS channel on YouTube, and it's called Technology. It's a dense video. It goes for quite a while, but it covers some very important topics. Based around a book that you've been reading. What's the name of the book again?
Yes, it's Albert Wenger's The World After Capital.
Very interesting topic. Hard to capture in a book, but I'm sure he does it justice. You were singing his praises a lot.
Oh yeah, and that's the very, very specific reason why I call it technology, because it pretty much goes into how, starting from day dot with fire or the invention of the wheel into
or the written form of language
and like to where we are nowadays. I guess to kind of do like a quick recap of it, he's basically saying, hey, we're kind of at a crossroads. And he does go into these ideas with technology of, zero marginal cost and the universality of computation. So just quickly to kind of go into that is zero marginal cost is like, hey, you open a pizza shop, you've got the oven running, and you've got your workers handy. If you were to cook a pizza, making that pizza, how much cost is involved in that compared to the price?
Right. And in the information age or the knowledge age, there's a new kind of form happening when it comes to producing kind of value and things in society, right?
Well, yes, because the thing is, unlike your imaginary pizza shop owner, because of zero marginal cost with putting something onto the internet, if I create a YouTube video and I put it on there, there's no marginal cost in me leaving something up on YouTube. It can just keep on ticking away with the views and the comments and all of that, and well, there's no upkeep costs. Like I'm sure potentially there is for YouTube, but not for you. And then, of course, there's the universality of computation, which, like I was saying before, the creation of fire, at least the ability to make fire, and then the creation of the wheel. And he basically goes through in a bunch of graphs how, starting from that to where we are now, and he uses the example of, non-commercial flight, or at least starting from the Wright brothers to non-commercial flight. Technology has basically exponentially shot up with growth. So there's a huge difference between the Wright brothers when they were first doing their first flight, heavier than air flight, compared to now where, hey, you can go into a commercial flight and go halfway across the world, whereas say take one step back before you had to get onto a ship, and I don't know, it would take you months and months to get somewhere. So exponential growth because of universality of computation. And this is where his huge claims come in. And this brings us to what he talks about in the knowledge age. What he believes is that at the moment we're at a crossroads. We're pretty much like the start of the industrial age, where instead of capital being scarce, it's actually attention. And this is where the idea of the job loop comes in, because as people on this who are frequent this channel know, structures like capitalism and all of that means we're kind of stuck in a loop where you're a person with skills, you sell your labor in order to buy stuff consume, and that is kind of
dynamic between production and consumption, or work or labor. and consumption.
Yes.
And they are intrinsically linked, but one leads to the other and then vice versa.
Yes, and really that kind of job loop, that's important for
The industrial
age where you have a compliant worker who, has their job description and they're not very creative. Well, they could be creative, but they stick to their job description and that's about it. Because, I guess they could have a job description that's creative, but that's not for that's not for every single job that's within the industrial age. And yes, there has been exponential growth within the industrial ages and the ages before that, but it starts to peel off. That's where I was talking about in the video essay about, when you have patents and, our great overlords, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, like monopolies.
When you have monopolies, then it only gets so far. And this is where he was really reinforcing the idea of what isn't scarce now is capital. It's actually attention. So
what does he mean by that? Like, what type of attention are you talking about here?
Yes. So, for example, I really love this quote, and I'm going to use it again. He basically goes on, when he says attention, he literally means people's attention. Like, if you're stuck in the industrial age like we are now, in this typical fashion of 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and then 8 hours to do whatever you want. Like a typical person, there's only so much you can do and so much you can kind of dedicate to leisure. Therefore, your attention and your ability to learn and be curious and everything like that, it's like very, very finite.
Strained,
And this is where, if you have this zero marginal cost and universality of computation, your mind and how you interact with people, it's very easy to be captured by these technologies that are, prime in these monopolies within the end of the industrial age. So the typical thing he says is, just to kind of show how easy it is to kind of get lost in this technology, is you could, I think the specific lines were, if you were to watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week
for 100 years,
for the next 100 years, what is uploaded to YouTube, you would only ever get through a week's worth of content. Just to show how exponential technology has gotten. But the thing is, like, as he showcases in that specific example, it's very easy for us to get caught up in, the daily news, like what's happening in other people's spaces. And because we're just our minds are so locked in the job loop of consuming everything, we haven't learnt how to adjust our minds to get to the next stages of technology. And that was the kind of the reason why he says in the knowledge age, in order to lock into our attention to make it like scarce, we have to learn how to learn, create, and share. And he specifically goes into, musicians, and he talks about how, which is very much connected to all of the Mariana Mazzucato stuff that I've been doing, because it's locked into the price dictates value and value dictates price. Just companies in general and everyone seems to be not want to do something unless you can kind of put a price on it. So he talks about how, before I get into the musician example, he talks about how technically medical institutions can do X-rays and all of that, they could potentially do them for free. But unless something has a price on it, they just don't see the point in doing that.
Yeah.
And he uses in the knowledge loop the idea of the musician, because usually what their creative pursuits are is, you know, the best sound and that sort of thing. And anything after that is basically that kind of job loop / industrial age mindset. So, you know, you getting a whole bunch of views, or you being able to align yourself with a record in order to be a successful artist, which really that idea of being a successful artist is based on you showing, you know, how much you're worth in terms of the price you can sell tickets at a concert or something like that. That is based on the old mindsets. And that's when he kind of goes into the whole ideas of economic freedom, informational freedom, and psychological freedom to free us from the job loop. But yes, I digress. It's a massive it's a condensed book, but it talks about very big ideas.
Yeah, it talks about some massive concepts, which will be very hard to unpack in one episode. But like, there's like some things that I really want to talk about is the idea of the implications of the information age that we're like a part of at the moment, and the proliferation of all of the technologies that have supported the rise of the information age. So like if you had the graph that you're talking about going from like the invention of written language to the invention of the printing press, and then the invention of the telegraph, and then telecommunications kind of infrastructure at large to where we are now, with the ability to, you know, access what we want at the click of a button or at our fingertips on a keyboard kind of thing. Like that, we are at, like you said, a fundamental kind of, or a pivotal point in our technological kind of trajectory, which is an age-defining moment. And that's why people refer to it as things like the knowledge age or the information age and all that sort of stuff. But with it, it is incredibly displacing, and it comes with a reordering of society and the social norms and all that sort of stuff. So like the industrial age is reigned over by basically industrial capitalists. So people that, you know, own the means of production in a traditional kind of industrial sense. But like at the moment you raise like, you know, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, people like that. Were in an age where like someone like Shoshana Zuboff would call the age of surveillance capitalism. So on the back of the information age, we now have the ability to kind of basically collect information off people, track their habits, track their daily lives, allowing them to provide us with data and information on themselves to create value in a way. So basically data mining is the new thing in the 21st century, and that's off the back of this technological change that you're talking about. And it's displacing the old social relations that define the industrial era, which is that relationship between labor and consumption. So you go to work, and you work to survive kind of thing. And like in the information age, there's like kind of a twofold thing going on there, where, you know, the technology itself is increasing at such a rapid rate through the implementation and the development of, you know, a big buzzword at the moment, AI. So artificial intelligence is, you know, supposedly changing so rapidly and is turning to a point at which it may be able to surpass humans in doing certain tasks and beyond just the menial kind of things that, you know, everyone expects for automation, but we'll actually be able to take on human style jobs, let's say, and do them as effectively as a human would, in the sense that you, as another human, wouldn't be able to tell if that's been done by a machine or not.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the information age, though, is that it detaches people from their social relations and their culture and all that sort of stuff, because they are constantly being drawn into living a digital existence. And so people don't exist in the real world as such anymore. They actually exist in a virtual reality for most of their time. So, like, look at the like a common criticism of social media, for example, that people will spend more time, taking selfies or uploading stuff onto a feed or talking about what they're doing and showcasing that, as opposed to actually living the experience itself. And more people spend, like, if you break your day into like an 8-hour working day, 8-hour rest or something like that, people spend, like, the average adult now spends 2 to 3 hours a day on social media. And
Yeah.
so that's where they kind of spend their life expressing themselves and talking to an audience and all that sort of stuff, talking to their social network. But it's not real, because it is all controlled at the whim of these surveillance capitalists, people who collect their data, not because, they're just statisticians and they like to know how people work at a macro level and all that sort of stuff. They're trapping their data to basically sell them products through like this big roundabout way. They give them what they want to see. Like on social media, algorithms feed them exactly what it is that is going to make them most likely to consume something, like consume content, that is. And then while they're in between all of that, they're pushing ads on them, and they're like kind of modifying their behavior in order to sell products. And like, I guess a good example of this information age in practice for someone like a surveillance capitalist, as opposed to a traditional like industrial capitalist, is the idea of Pokemon Go. Now, Pokemon Go was the coming together of like information capitalists of all different kind of, massive strands to work on a project that would kind of deliver something that's never been done before. You had like the Google Maps phenomenon. So like the mapping of the entire planet, they gave like a really good basis for an interactive world, like a virtual reality world where you're actually in reality, but you put your phone up and it shows you like this Pokemon kind of landscape, right? And that was tied in with like Nintendo and the gaming community and all that sort of stuff to basically provide additional resources to map the planet a little bit better. So, there's only so far that the Google vans can drive around and take pictures of everything. You need people to actually go out there and help map society for you. And so it's about, for these surveillance capitalists, it's got nothing to do with, you buying the game and, like paying for additional features on the game and then making money that way. No, it's about them being able to capture more and more information. So you go out and map the world for them and go to places where they can't go, and they get your GPS data and they figure out what you're doing. And then they're also using that against you by, like, let's say, for example, I never played it, but like if you needed to go to a Poke Center, I think it is, to get health
Pokestops,
Pokestop, okay, or if you wanted to go to like a gym to fight someone like McDonald's or Starbucks in America cut deals with Google and Pokemon Go and said, put us as a Poke Center, put us as a gym or something like that. And so you've got people that are playing a game for free that are feeding a system like their geographical information, their personal information, because, it's accessing your phone and it's taking your data, it's scanning your face, all this sort of biometric data, blah, 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 blah. It's also pushing people and modifying their behavior. And it's taking them to places that they want to go to because they want to play the game, but really, I'm Starbucks. Maybe I'll have a coffee while I'm here and buy a muffin. So, like,
I've I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is more of the informational freedom side of what Albert Wenger is talking about.
Mm.
But he goes into painstaking details about API systems. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, how an interface actually works with this sort of informational technology, and how you signing away all of the privacy agreements and all of the agreements that you never look at, you're actually saying to Facebook, you're saying to YouTube, you're saying to all these informational giants, hey, I'm giving you the ability, sorry, I'm giving you the authority that I can only use what you want me to see, touch, feel, whatever it is. I will see what you want me to see, and that is all I will do. And basically Albert goes into this idea of, well, yeah, you kind of see and touch and do everything that Facebook wants to see, but if we want to unlock the knowledge age, then you should be able to use bots that can automatically automate things for you, like see on Uber and like what the best deal is and that sort of thing. And what they've actually been finding with these kind of very limited end user programs is that you actually have, internet providers or for a typical country, and they knock on Facebook's door, they knock on McDonald's door, they knock on all these big companies' doors, and it's like, hey, YouTube, so obviously I've got the internet providers for all of these people. You want to cut a deal where I show your content more on everything that they view, rather than, say, your competitors?
Yeah.
So how about you give me a little fee and I can expose your content more? So it actually, like, Albert actually shows that, all of these companies are kind of working together to grab your attention.
Yes. And that's why I want to talk about attention, because I think it's really important, because that's what this information age feeds off. And it didn't have to be this way. Like, there was kind of this ideal in like the 80s kind of thing, where they were thinking about making this house that kind of, the smart house, like what we actually have today kind of thing. Like, you talk to some device in your house and, like, say, turn the heater on, or play this song, or turn the oven on so it's ready for me to put the roast chicken in, or something like that. Like, that was already kind of conceived of back in the 80s, but like the intention behind that technology was only to be used for someone's personal, like, benefit. So, like, if I had that technology in my house, then, like, that information was kept inside my house. So, like, no one was monitoring when I turn the oven on, / when I want to turn the air conditioner on, / when my robot vacuum cleaner is running around the floor vacuuming and stuff like that, collecting that data and sending it back to some company that makes ovens and vacuum cleaners and air conditioners, and saying, hey, Myster E has been using his air conditioner a lot, and it's a bit out of date, so maybe you should push an ad to him to get him to buy a new air conditioning unit. So that was never the intention of the information age, and this, like, broad reach of data collection and, like, crazy artificial intelligence that can get in and, like, understand you better than you know yourself, because it's got some incredible statistics on you, and it's like collecting your data and, like, basically understanding how you live in a personal way, but, like, by just, like, volumes and volumes and volumes of information. Now, this information could have been restricted to the individual, and the individual could have had rights over it. And so that type of stuff, that capturing information, spills over into other forms of consumption. And like you were talking about before, we are in a consumer mindset. So when it comes to things like social media, like, anyone who's used, like, TikTok or, like, I don't know, Instagram or anything like that, can be incredibly engrossing. It's sapping up all of people's attention. And so they're not creating things as such unless they're creating, like, they're content creators themselves.
Well, yes.
They're just digesting lots of other stuff and getting caught in this loop where their attention is just being sucked out of them, like, completely.
Well, that's the whole reason for the concept of doom scrolling, where I think this is more of a TikTok thing. Though I might have to ask my partner because she's on TikTok more than I don't use it, but I think that's the idea of, you know, viewing something quickly and then you'd go into the next thing and then you go into the next thing. Then all of a sudden, you know, something that I guess collectively is like a minute at tops, because you've just got into this dopamine hit after dopamine hit. Suddenly an hour goes by and you're like, oh crap, and where did that go? And
like, again, with incredibly short attention spans as well, like the decrease of people's ability to pay attention to something is, like, you know, just being shrunk down, like, massively. And this is a result of this corruption of the information age. The information age can take a trajectory where it kind of serves humanity's purposes and serves humankind. But like you said before, technology will go exponentially and up to a certain point until the monopoly on that technology curtails it and stops it from running. And that is happening in the information age primarily through patents. So you have these massive tech giants who can create some incredible technology, but they're not creating it because, you know, they want to kind of be avant-garde and, you know, create this new society and, like, unleash all this humanity potential or something like that. They're just doing it so they can control people in terms of how they access their information. So, like, they've got these incredible algorithms working and these credible data centers out there, and it's all just to mine behavioral data or, like, map the world and understand the entire world. It's like that big kind of brain thing in Futurama that's, like, trying to understand the entire universe, and when it finally understands the universe, it, like, takes over and it's going to destroy everything. But like, it is very similar to that. Like, Futurama are very prescient in that regard. This is the scale, and this is the information age as it is kind of co-opted by capitalism. And before it was industrial capitalists, but now the capitalists of this age are not interested in value creation as much as they are just about collecting information. And that's why I think it is the information age, but it's a surveillance capitalist dominated information age, because you have big tech out there that is basically writing the script and, like, setting the tone for everything.
Yes, and also price is really important. And, you know, this might seem hyperbolic, but, I remember even Mariana Mazzucato saying in The Value of Everything that these big monopolies, what they love to do is even capture patents on certain types of technologies and then just hold on to it.
Yeah.
They'll just, like, hold on to it. They won't even do anything about it. So this may sound hyperbolic, but there is technically a potentiality out there that we have cured cancer, but somebody just has the patent for curing cancer, and they're just sitting on it because they haven't found out how to best sell that product.
Yeah. Or it's going to, like, you know, diminish some other part of their industry or somebody else's industry. Like, there is a big industry in, like, you know, I know this is cliche, but, like, you know, there is a big industry out there, $1 billion industry in treating cancer. So if you found a cure for cancer, why would you release that into the capitalist world where there's a big market out there about treating as opposed to curing? So, like, information in the information age is almost like the means of production in the industrial age. Those who control the means of production control society, kind of thing. Like, in the information age, it could be a defining moment against the industrial capitalist age, because those who control the knowledge, because, like what you said, technology has come so far and it's grown so exponentially, and it's kind of at our will to use it the way we want to, because it's just so advanced now.
Yeah.
It's not just about controlling the technology, it's about just controlling the information over that technology
Yes.
which makes you distinct from your competitor. Like a big salient theme in like Marx's Capital Volume 1 is like, under the laws of coercive competition, like capitalists are competing with each other, and let's just say one of them learns how to make a shoe better than the other one, they'll just send someone into that factory, or they'll get the shoe and reverse engineer it and make the same shoe. So like there's no control over the information there, because you can get your hands on your competitor's product and you can figure out how they did it and then do the same thing. And then so like it can continually, the competition drives innovation, and the competition drives all these wonderful things that, neoliberals or libertarians and stuff like go on about how wonderful the market system is, but that doesn't account for monopolies. And in this age, it's not just like, you can't just get access to Facebook stuff and reverse engineer it, especially as an individual. Maybe if you're another multi-million-dollar / multi-billion-dollar corporation, maybe you could figure out how they're doing stuff, or you kind of deal with them and like you get access to their technology. But the average person can't do that. The average business can't do that. So we have these giant monopolies out there whose basically sole purpose in the information age is to control information and use it to basically push advertising. So it's like this giant feedback loop where, you, the user, are consuming stuff that they're sending you, and then by giving them more of your information, they can push more stuff onto you to consume, which brings me then to the next point of this podcast, and another big theme that you talk about in your video, which is all about consumption, I think, is the universal basic income.
Yes.
And like the idea that in this kind of age, in this information age, or this heightened industrial capital age, should we be moving to having something like a universal basic income in society to kind of cover the people's costs of living?
Yes.
So they can, spend their time on other things, especially when you have all this discussion. Like it happens so much at the moment, especially around the AI revolution and the impacts of AI, is that like if AI is going to start displacing so many jobs and stuff like that, do we need to have another solution when a large section of our population around the world is displaced because machines can do human-like stuff and probably better than humans can? Do we need something like a safety net, but not even a safety net, but in this case, a UBI, or universal basic income, is more like a foundation. Do we need a foundation to society to kind of keep us all together?
You used a good word there, foundation. Because in terms of a UBI, that's what I would describe it, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there when it does come to a universal basic income. And even there's progressive minds or progressive speakers that are out there that are actually against a universal basic income. However, those people and, people like, unfortunately, I have to say, Van Batten and Ben Davidson, I feel like they are kind of locked into the thinking of the job loop. So, like, for example, from those sort of progressive thinkers, what I do hear is, but if we have a universal basic income, that will decrease our rights in the workplace. The way I would kind of argue that sort of thinking is to think of it as it undermining unions or undermining people at work. That's the wrong way to kind of think about it. The whole point of the universal basic income is not necessarily to replace jobs, not to have if you were to have a right-wing conservative come at you and be like, it'll just encourage people to be lazy. No, that's the wrong way to think about it. The whole point of a universal basic income to get into the knowledge age is that it is it's a foundation where people can choose whether they want to interact with a market, whether they want to interact with, whether they want to work. So what it does is it covers your living expenses. So what it does is, say you have an allotment for an adult of so much to rent, so much to clothes and general living expenses.
Yeah.
And really what it does is it just brings you up so you have a basic level of existence to subsist within society.
Yeah.
And then you can choose whether you want to interact with markets. Yeah, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I like that concept of you get to choose whether you interact with markets as opposed to diminishing people's right to work. Because that is actually something that I've heard from, like you said, progressive or leftist thinkers, because like there's kind of this very strong attachment to like work in the working class to the right to work. That's like a big salient theme that's been running through working class movements for 200 years. So like people would argue, no, work is a right, and you need that in an industrial capitalist society that is defined by labor, and like you sell your labor in a wage work system in order to survive, and so everyone needs to have the right to work. So like giving someone a universal, or giving people universal basic income, which kind of like displaces the need to rely on work fundamentally to give you your subsistence level, I don't think that diminishes your kind of right to work. If anything, it actually gives you the power of choice, because most people don't get to make the decision when they decide to get a job or when they need to get a job and say, oh, well, I'm going to go for the job that I really like. They go for a job that they can get, and one that will probably pay enough to meet their subsistence needs, plus a few luxuries here and there. So if you had the subsistence need part that's catered for, you actually have more bargaining power when you go to an employer, because if it's a crappy job or it's something that you're not really interested, you can say, look, give me what I want, or I'm not going to work for you and I'll just go somewhere else. But if you're desperate, you'll take on basically anything, doesn't matter how crap the job is, in order to make ends meet, at least for the interim, until you find something else. So I agree with you there. It's definitely foundational in the sense that it allows people the power to choose. It doesn't take away people's right to work at all. It doesn't attack the institution of wage labor at all, really.
Yes.
But like what you raised a very interesting kind of dynamic that is like defined by the industrial kind of the industrial age, which is, like work and labor labor and consumption kind of work together in this symbiotic relationship. And the UBI would kind of, the idea of the universal basic income would basically overturn one of the main tenets of capitalism from an industrial perspective. And that is the idea, right, that like when it comes to the welfare state, so like after or like during the world wars and stuff like that, and especially after that, there was a lot of work done by the working class because they'd sacrificed so much in the world wars to get their freedom and live a meaningful life and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of work done by the capitalist class, let's call it, and the working class, regulated by the state, to kind of give people a social safety net, so like social welfare systems. And so like people fought for the pension, they fought for health care, assurances, and like, minimum wages, and like all of these sort of conditions that allowed them to have, as a working class, as a group, as the largest section of society, kind of these securities that they weren't going to be just continually screwed over by the market system. And so like that worked in the industrial kind of capitalist age, because you just have work and, kind of those people that own the institutions and the workplaces and all that sort of stuff. And like they brokered deals with each other, and that worked really well up until a certain point when, neoliberalism kind of started, and there was like kind of a degradation of the social safety net and all that sort of stuff. Like that started to be eroded massively. And when you have that kind of erosion of the social safety net, and like basically what happens since the 70s, and we've talked about this a lot, is like wages have stagnated.
Yes.
So wages have stagnated in a sense, and because they have, people aren't able to kind of insure themselves. So they're not able to put as much money into the social safety net. And like as rich people or, big corporations advocate more and more for tax breaks, you have less money to go around for the social safety nets. And like this compounds because then, people in the media and politicians turn around and say, well, look, the social safety nets don't work. And then you have all these bludgers that are just feeding off the system while you're out there working hard at your job. And these lazy, like dull bludgers and these bums are just like living off the system. So there's like this stigma attached to like people living off social safety nets and stuff like that. And that stigma has been put on universal basic income. Because then people, like you said, are just like, well, why should I work and like someone get like, money guaranteed when I'm off, busting my chops at this place and working hard. And you're just going to create this society where people are like, well, I'm not going to work anymore. And they just become bums and stuff like that. And they do nothing. And like, that's just a really kind of like cheap way of looking at this whole system, because the idea of a universal basic income is for everyone. So if you are a billionaire and if you are just dirt poor, you will both get the same universal basic income. It's not means tested, it's universal. And so like...
Yes. Yeah, like it doesn't matter whether you're a rich person or you are a poor person. The whole point of the universal basic income is it probably means less for the rich person, but it means the world for the poor person. But also 2 points, because if you have a scenario where I guess you are kind of dealing with people's needs and like the cost that they do in order to subsist in society, we already have proof here in Australia that something like that actually could be a benefit. And look, this might have been one of the very few things that Scott Morrison did right here in Australia, but one of them one of those things that he did right were during the pandemic, childcare was made free. And the funny thing about that was it had an actual deflationary period within the Australian economy, and it actually provided a net benefit to working families within Australia. Now, point 2, which I kind of want to address the elephant in the room, because you're naturally going to get conservatives turn around and be like, okay, well, how are you going to pay for this? Now, what's very interesting right now is Australia is about to be the guinea pig for the world. A lot of governments are waiting with bated breath of how this works out, but currently Australia is working on country-by-country legislation. Now, what's interesting about the country-by-country legislation is you have certain corporation, so for example, Facebook, and if you want to exist in Australian law, you basically have to disclose whether you're a rich person or whether you're a certain company within Australia. You have to disclose all of your assets and where they're located within the world.
Yeah.
So unlike before, like was exposed with the Panama Papers and all of that, where you can get the big four accounting firms to do a whole bunch of numbers and shifting things around by saying, oh, we'll up your consultant costs and then you have to pay zero tax.
Yeah.
Rather than doing that, they actually have to say, hey, so you have to report on all those nice pretty little assets you have in the Cayman Islands now. And in regards to Australia, you have to pay the proper tax.
Yeah.
And if suddenly you have a situation where Big companies are paying the tax they're supposed to pay, and all the wealthy people are paying all the tax that they're
Yeah.
supposed to pay
Yeah.
because they have to disclose all of their assets all over the world. Then suddenly UBI doesn't become such a pie in the sky scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like that's the thing about universal basic income as well. I think it needs to be universal. And it shouldn't be done by country by country. It should be given up in all countries of the world, set to, above the minimum wage if there exists one in your country. And it should be granted to kind of all people, because this is something that is going to be needed if in the information age we're moving into a society where there's kind of potentially less and less work to go around, or work will become very specific and only in certain niches where technology is not required or humans are integral to the process. And so we should be spreading the idea of universal basic income to make it really legitimate and actually make it hold across the whole of the globe. And that actually extends to what you're talking about, the regulation of it. If you're going to be using kind of people that usually tax dodge or hide their investment and their money around, then you need to kind of regain some of the national GDP or the global GDP that everyone contributes to, but like only a certain amount of people get to hold on to. You need like kind of a world regulating organization or some type of coalition between multiple nations in order to hold people that just shift their money around accountable, so you can tax them or like take a dividend off them on their kind of profits or something like that, or their stocks and or their offshore accounts, in order to be able to produce that for everyone. And so like the universality of the universal basic income is the most important thing. Now, I have done a lot of kind of praising of the idea of the universal basic income like over the last 10 minutes now, but like I would like to criticize it. Now, this is, maybe controversial, but I really don't care, because the universal basic income is a factor, I think, of an industrial age, of that kind of idea that, you either work to consume and like you kind of consume and then so you got to work and all that sort of stuff. So the universal basic income allows all these people to just kind of pay for the necessities that they need to exist on the planet Earth in the 21st century. But if you look at something like, the UN's like Charter of Rights and human rights and stuff like that, like things like housing and like access to food and clean drinking water and all that sort of stuff are actually human rights. So like the universal basic income is a fantastic idea, but like it's like literally like step one in like, so many different ways that we can combat or like aid people to have a like meaningful existence on planet Earth. So like that is like a very short-term kind of goal for me, or it's supplementary to something that is much greater, and that is providing these basic human rights to people. So like it is the responsibility of the nation or the global community to make sure that everyone has housing. Housing shouldn't come up as a cost of living. People need a house, like especially if you live in a country that's like, terribly cold, or you live in a place that's terribly hot or something like that. Or like, look, don't worry about temperature. People just need housing. Okay. In the modern world, people live in a domicile of some nature or to some degree. And so that should be a right. That should be provided to everyone, whether that's done through the market or it's done through public housing programs, don't really care, but it should be a right. So like, if you're renting somewhere, then the government or whoever it is should pay your rent for you. Or if they're not going to do that, then they should put up massive public housing programs so everyone has a house regardless. And if the people choose to go into the market to live somewhere, then that choice is on them. But everyone has a foundation, which is a house. Everyone has access to clean drinking water. that should be taken off the market. There should be no companies, no corporations involved in providing water services. That should be completely public asset and you shouldn't have to pay for it. The idea that you have to connect to a water service or something like that and pay a fee, whether it's nominal or not, is just an affront to, humanity. And like the same goes with like electricity, any of the infrastructure that you need to kind of exist in the modern world. So and that comes down to the internet for me and telecommunications in general, because we are in the information age. And if they want to take this kind of seriously and have people connected and like being able to live in this new world, then we just got to provide these things to people. Then on top of that, give them a wage after you've provided for all of their necessities as a human right. And so the universal basic income, while it kind of addresses things because it gives people a chance to exist in a market system, I would say primarily we've got to take certain things off the market straight away, no questions asked. These things are human rights. And if we're not providing them for one another, it's got nothing to do with responsibility or people will be lazy and like all this sort of stuff. This is just human decency that we're talking about here. People shouldn't have to live with certain privations and they shouldn't have to live like kind of a degraded existence because they don't find a place in the market. And yes,
Right.
UBI will be able to solve that to a certain extent, but like if we know anything about capitalism, we talk about it all the time, like you can have all of these nice conditions inbuilt into the system, like we were talking about before, after like the world wars, like they got all this social security and safety nets and all that sort of stuff happening. Yeah. And what happened to it? 30 years later, not even, completely eroded. It's a thing of the past now. So if you have UBI, it might work for a couple of generations at best, and then it's gone when like there's a change of political power or some regime comes into effect or there's years of, like propaganda against it by the mainstream media or people on social media or what have you. It will be degraded. So unless you turn those things into fundamental human rights and provide for that, so it can't be taken away and it becomes an absolute expectation of all people, then like UBI for me is just, it's nice. The decoration, but like it's not a foundational element in that regard. And the other problem that I have with UBI, and this is why we talked, I think, first about the information age and the way technology is going and surveillance capitalism and all that sort of thing. The other thing that I find a problem with UBI, if we're actually moving into a surveillance capitalist version of the information age, is that will suit them just fine. Like look at your big tech companies, look at Facebook for an example and stuff like that, or TikTok or whatever. Their job, their number one aim is to have people attached to their phones or devices and consuming content on that particular platform non-stop, 24 hours a day if they could. If people couldn't sleep, they'd want them on 24 hours a day. But people do have to sleep, but they don't have to work. They don't have to work. And so if they're given a basic income, that just frees them up to be completely plugged in to the system at all times. And their attention will disappear. Their creativity, their ability to learn, their ability to share will completely disappear because they'll be in a completely corporatized digital space at all times, plugged into the system like the Matrix or something like that. And they'll be fed a universal basic income which covers their basic subsistence, which will just be basically, okay, I'm being told to consume this. All right, well, I better do that. And then I'll buy this product and I'll buy that product because I'm being fed it constantly through social media. So I think there is a danger of the UBI, creating this system where people don't want to work and all that sort of stuff. But it's not because they're lazy and all that sort of stuff. It's because our behavior is being completely modified and is under attack all the time because of our connection to the information world, to the internet and all that sort of stuff. We're completely engrossed by it. And something like the UBI, without providing for people's fundamental rights like housing, clean water and all that sort of stuff, people are addicted to the information age and like the information technology, let's say. And they, with a UBI, they will be coerced without knowing it, because this is like subliminal stuff we're talking about here. like someone who's addicted to a poker machine. A poker machine is not like a random gaming device that just uses chance and stuff like that. These are computerized like technologies, computational technologies that use behavioral tricks on people to suck them in and like play on their most addictive characteristics that are just innate within humans to get people coming back non-stop. So in the information age, not the industrial age, I think it's UBI is a good thing for the industrial age, but in the information age, UBI is potentially a very dangerous thing for IS. And like I would kind of preface our whole conversation, that's why I think rights are more important than the UBI, because people will like a drug addict will go through their whole paycheck to just get another hit. People will spend all of their resources on social media / information technologies.
I think you do raise a good point before with, I guess if we do stay in this little nook between the industrial age and the knowledge age, then something like a UBI would effectively be a crutch, where it would just be treating the symptoms rather than curing the disease, if you will. But I think that's kind of like a bit of a teaser and a reason to check out my video. I think that's a huge reason why Albert Wenger doesn't just stop with UBI. He discusses other freedoms that need to happen, which kind of go to your, there needs to be a psychological freedom where, people aren't continually pressing the button, they aren't continually doom scrolling through social media, not being motivated in order to be, I guess, creative or interacting with other people, and there needs to be incentives for them to get involved in the knowledge loop. And that's where the other ones of informational freedom, so getting things off of patents, because really there are basically common knowledge patents out there where what people do is, I just want to be attributed for my research or the music that I've made, and you put it up into that license, and your Facebooks and all of that don't have access to that. Or other aspects with informational stuff is that there is the technology out there that if you're able to relinquish all the privacy agreements and everything from Facebook, then you can basically implement bots to actually decipher through information and actually give you the information that you want. Like, hey, what is the best route to go to places? What is the best thing for me to buy, and for Google's products to be prefaced over other things that might be better for you. And then leading to psychological freedom, because this is what Albert Wenger says, is that we're actually dialed into what they call System 1 habits, which is basically, I see a headline of an article, does that make me happy? Does that make me sad? Like, we're dialed into the heuristics of reacting to things rather than stopping and using our System 2 processes, which is being rational and being working things through methodically and being like, okay, I do see this headline, or I do see this. Does it make sense for me to be angry about this? Does this information, is this actually misinformation, or is this disinformation? And going from there. And, maybe doing mindfulness is the start, but we have to get started in these sort of processes in order to lead elsewhere. So again, to kind of go back to the country by country stuff that I was saying, yes, that might be a good start, but maybe that starts a domino effect where UBI becomes far more universal. And then suddenly when, the prices of a certain cost of living come down where, I don't know, you can 3D print a house, then suddenly it's much more easier for a house to be a right. For for third world countries, it's much easier for them to have access to clean water. And then go from there. But if people are going to capture the technology and basically guard it via patents, then you're just going to be stuck in that plateau and not move.
Yeah. Just before we close out, really, really interesting fact for you, 4S, because I know you're going to absolutely love this, because I couldn't believe it when I found it out. But the idea of UBI was actually advanced by, let's say, right-wing or conservative economic thinkers.
Really?
In its inception. And guess who it was? It was actually Milton Friedman who came up with the idea originally as a way to attack social welfare, because he was like, oh, well, let's get rid of all these things that are superfluous, let's just give everyone a basic income kind of thing, and then we can get rid of the social safety net system. We can get rid of social security and all this sort of stuff. Like that, he did it as an attack on social security, but the idea of a universal basic income came from our best friend Milton Friedman. So
the father of neoliberalism
let you
came
digest.
up with UBI.
Well, again, it was a very kind of negative approach to the concept, but I'll let you digest that one until we speak again, 4AS, because I know that's going to keep you up at night, baby. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm literally going to be that brain and person sleeping meme where it's like, are you asleep? Are you asleep? Are you asleep, 4AS? And then it's like, shut up, I'm trying to sleep. And it's like, Milton Friedman created UBI. And then my eyes will just pop over.
Yeah, and he's just dancing in your dreams. You like that, 4AS? Huh? Yeah. So I thought I'd leave you with that because you'd appreciate it. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. Okay. Well, last segment, as we always do. What's that synthwave art? So the prompt for today was AI taking control of the knowledge age, and it came up with some very Tron art.
Yeah, it looks like
it's like very synthwave, but she's got the golden helmet and the jackets, and you know what? It's a cross between the Matrix and Tron.
Yeah, let's go with that. I like that.
And with that, everyone, remember to keep thinking and keep learning. And to sign us off, I'll give it to you, Myster E.
Thank you very much, 4IS, and to everybody who's listening out there, please remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.